Hello, I'm Tony, and today we are entering Bullet Hell in Wildcat Gun Machine, which is free from the Epic Games Store until the 15th of December 2022. Before we get into the gameplay, let me give you a rundown of the story. You are a cartoon-styled character with a very cool haircut. You have a gun, and there's things that you need to kill because you've got a gun and you've got to have something to use it on. Yeah, that's it. There's no story. Just shooting. So, how is the shooting? I mean gameplay. It's the same thing. Well, it's a twin stick shooting game, which means you use the left stick to move and the right stick to aim your weapon, or WASD to move and your mouse to aim, which works pretty well, though it sometimes felt that my character slowed down a bit when I was aiming the right stick in the opposite direction to the left. Maybe that's just me or my controller though. You have the standard things in a shoot 'em up bullet hell type game, or at least you gain them as you progress. You have an infinite ammo low damage weapon, and you can pick up a more powerful secondary weapon with limited ammo, which you can switch between at any time. You will eventually gain a high damage grenade on a timer, as well as a dash, also on a timer. Pretty normal stuff. You've got your exploding barrels and several enemy types to kill, some of which swarm you and some that try to fill the screen with bullets, which is good on them, trying to justify the genre of the game. As you kill enemies and you explore, you find armor pickups that absorb a single hit, which you can have up to 3, health pickups, and ammo for your secondary weapon. There's also the skeletons of, I think, previous unfortunate explorers, killed by the laser traps or roaming enemies. These give you what I think are bones, which you can use to buy new guns, speed increases, more dashes, more grenades, and more respawns, in the form of cats for some reason, or lower cooldowns, all bought from a central checkpoint. Central, because the level is divided up into areas, which are locked behind coloured keys. Mini-bosses sit at the end of each of these sections, and killing each of them removes some of the alien gunk, preventing the door to the main boss from opening. The respawns I just mentioned allow you to retry a particular room without having to reset the entire level, which would mean clearing every single room you've already done. So they're pretty useful at a mini-boss. Once you've killed enough enemies, you can use your gun machine weapon, which is in the title, which gives you invulnerability and a lot of firepower. It don't last too long, but it did devastate a mini-boss or two. Unfortunately, it's very time consuming to charge up, so if you die to a boss and respawn, you're probably not going to have it available for your subsequent retries. I've mostly been talking about the first act because the boss at the end of the first act took a long time for me to kill. Man, I found it tough. If no one else found it tough, I'll accept that I'm not very good at these games. But the jump in difficulty between the rest of the act and the last boss is a really big one. I spent almost as long on the boss as I did the rest of the act. I've checked the footage of the boss fight because it felt like sometimes I was getting hit by explosions that seemed like they shouldn't have hit me. I think I'm right, but it's hard to tell. The telegraphs for the boss's attacks are a little bit deceptive. The area they affect is actually far larger than the indication would suggest. Oh, and I had a bit of trouble with using the controller. It was sometimes a bit sluggish. Not sure if that's the game fault or the controller. Maybe my controller's not working properly. I have other excuses for it taking so long. I mean, I was tired. It's cold. The lighting in my room was bad. I was distracted by something. Joking aside, it was hard. It was hard enough to kind of like discourage me from playing on. I didn't really have much enthusiasm left for Act 2 when I finally got there, which is a shame. The boss mechanics through the mini bosses and the main boss are good. There are actually mechanics. Predictable ones, but still difficult to avoid. But you're given plenty of ammo for your secondary weapon, and an appropriate secondary weapon just happens to be found outside the boss fights quite a lot of the time, weirdly, which is nice. Outside of the boss fights, the first act was fine. It never felt like it was unreasonably difficult or anything. There was a couple of areas I needed to kind of try it out and then realise I was doing something wrong. Laser traps I didn't know were there. The things that killed me were my silly mistakes. What I saw the second act was quite different from the first act. Different enemies, different environmental hazards, things that blow up as you walk past them this time, instead of barrels that you shoot to blow up. So it does seem like there's variety to the different acts, which is good. The changes in the enemy types also require a change in the gun types. Changing weapons is actually quite a large part of the game. The weapons are significantly different when you use them, and definitely suit some fights and some situations better than others. So it gives a little bit of an element of customization to the game. A bit. Because there's loads of weapons available, I think there's about 40 all told. And your gun machine and grenades can also be improved. It adds a little bit more depth to the game than just shooting, though I don't think it's enough to get in the way of the feel of it just being about shooting. Overall, this game was pretty good. It's straightforward, no nonsense, shoot 'em up bullet hell, with a bunch of weapons to play around with, but not really any bells and whistles beyond that. I'm not going to give it a full recommendation because of the concern that there's going to be another large spike in difficulty further on in the game, because of my experience with the first boss, which, as I said, just completely killed my enjoyment of the game as a whole. I played for about 3 hours for this review, which is shorter than I normally would, but like I say, I just lost enthusiasm for it. Because it's an Epic Games Store game that I need to get the video out for quicker, I can't really see any kind of feeling of wanting to play the game again coming back in that time frame. Sorry all, I really did try to get further. This is why I can't recommend it, because I think some people that might enjoy the game are just going to get frustrated with it because of the large spikes in difficulty. Now if you like bullet hell games, it is worth a look. Just be prepared for those spikes, and ideally be better than me, which probably isn't that difficult. Okay, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.